Please be seated. The court is now in session. The chamber now gives the floor to the co-prosecutor to put a further question to Mr. Witness. I again remind the co-prosecutor and civil party together they have time from now on until 11:30. Co-prosecutor. Thank you, Mr. President. Madam Witness, I would like to resume my questioning. Before the break, you mentioned about those who presided over your ceremony. I had a document to present to you. Mr. President, I would like to seek your permission to present document D232/71. It is a written record of another witness. And I seek your leave to provide these documents to Madam Witness. And I would like to remind Madam Witness that you are asked to read the written record of interview without mentioning the names of this person in the document. President, your request is granted. Court officer, you are instructed to get the document and give to Madam Witness. This document, pages 1 and 2. Could you please read the names? Could you please just look at the names? And could you tell the courts that the person which was interviewed and the name which was written down in that document was the one who attended and presided over your wedding ceremony? Answer. Do you want me to read all the documents? President, no, you are not asked to read. Court officer, you are instructed to assist the witness in answering to the question put by co-prosecutor. Co-prosecutor, page 1, the last sentence, with a bold sentence, one name is written there. Do you see the name? Co-prosecutor, I would like to ask you to look at the names on page 1, the last sentence. Now, I put a question to you. The name you saw in the written record of the interview, I would like to know whether this person attended and presided over your wedding ceremony during Khmer Rouge time. Answer. Yes, this person attended my wedding ceremony at the time, and I did not know this person. Co-prosecutor. Thank you. Now, I would like to know about the ceremonies of your wedding at that time. On the day you were asked to make a resolution, there were people presided over the ceremony, and after you made your resolution, so what happens during the night after the marriage? Answer: after making resolution, in fact, they moved me out of the units, and I was asked to live in a house after making resolutions during the daytime. I did not go to stay in the house that was arranged for us on that night. My husband went to that house, and I went to my own unit. Unit chief was not aware of this at the time, and I was thought that I was staying and living in that house. After 3 days, they realized that I did not go to live and stay in that house during the night, and there was a letter saying that they knew about the fact that I did not stay and live with my husband in the house arranged by Angka. Question: 3 days later, you mentioned that 3 days later, there was one who called you to come back and live in that house arranged by Angka. Who was this person? Answer: Bươn, the commune chief, went to call me, and he asked me to live in the house arranged by Angka. Question: in the statement you provided to co-investigating judges, question answer number 8, you stated that, quotes, after 3 days, commune chief told me to go and live with my husband, unquote. I would like to know who told you at that time. Was it Bươn or was it a commune chief, unit chief rather? Answer: it was Bươn who told me, the commune chief. He supervised, he had overall supervision in my place. Question: did you remember what Bươn told you exactly at that time? Answer: at that time, I actually do not recall the exact words from the Bươn mouth, and there was I was not forced at that time to live in the house. I was just told that please go and live in the house arranged by husband and wife. So, question: what do you mean by saying you had to go and live together with your wife, with your husband? Answer: they asked us to live together without having any quarrel. And on that night, when I stayed with my husband, there was a militiaman eavesdropping from below my house, during which I knew that there was militiaman eavesdropping what we was doing at home, but actually we did not do anything during the night. We just slept, quietly, because we understood that there was a militiaman down below our house. Question, you know that there was militiaman there below your house, and did you sleep with your husband on that night? Answer, yes, I had. Yes, I slept with my husband on that night. Question, did you sleep with your husband voluntarily or involuntarily? Answer, I had to sleep with my husband because I would be danger if I did not sleep with my husband, because there was a militiaman eavesdropping. I submitted myself to be wife. I could not avoid, so I tried to take this. Question. Actually, did you have choice to be made at that time, or you had to sleep, or did you have to sleep with him? Answer, I had no choice, because we were husband and wife, and if we did not accept each other, and then I would be had difficult feeling, so I could not change the situation, so I would have to be ready for that. I kept praying, actually, if this man was my destined partner, and then I hope he would be good to me. I prayed to God every day. And if this person was my destined partner, I pray that he would be good to me. And from time to time, we could live along with each other, and I started to love him. Question. I would like to know about the night you were with your husband. You said that you were afraid at that night. If you were afraid, why did not you refuse? President, please hold on. You have to wait until the tip of microphone turns red. Answer. At first, I did not love my husband, but I was afraid because there was a militiaman below my house. And my husband tried to console me, and he said that we were husband and wife, so we had nothing to hide each other. I listened to my husband, and at the same time I was afraid. The militiaman was listening in what we were doing, whether we live along with each other or we had argument. In my village, after marriage was held, the family did not live along with each other, and after that the couple were invited to be to get instruction, to be advised. As I said, I was not satisfied with my husband. I did not love him. But after a short while, I adapted to the situation, and we lived as husband and wife until now. Co-prosecutor, thank you, Madam Witness. To clarify what you just said, I would like to refer to your answer 8 in the written record of interview by co-investigating judges. You said, I did not want to make love with my husband, but I forced myself to do so. I knew my husband did not love me because he loved another woman. Could you clarify to the chamber why you said you were forced at the time? Answer. In my case, I understand his heart, his feeling. At that time, my husband had someone in mind. He loved a lady because they had different background. They could not get married. As I said, my husband, he did not want to get married as well, and he was told that he could not get married to another lady besides me. And as I said, the lady that my husband loved had different background from his. I understand that my husband did not love me. He did not have me in his heart, and I did not have him in my heart as well. And as I said, since we were husband and wives, we had to love each other. I had the feeling that my husband did not love me because he had someone in mind already. Looking from his outside appearance, it did not mean that he did not love me, and he kept saying that that lady was not his destined partner. On that night, as I said, there was a militiaman eavesdropping below my house, so I was afraid. If I got married at the modern time, and if I did not want to get married, I would refuse the marriage. Although I did not love my husband at that time, I had to accept the situation since I could see that death is in front of me. Question: if you refuse the marriage, what would happen? President: Witness, you are instructed not to answer to the question because this is a hypothetical question. Co-prosecutor: thank you, Mr. President. I finished my question, and I may ask your leave to give the floor to international co-prosecutor. President, you may now proceed, international co-prosecutor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Madam Witness. Let me start by just following up on one point from the subject you've been discussing. What I wanted to ask about is your state of mind at the time, the first night when you were asked to stay and live with your husband. Did you and did your husband fear there would be consequences if you did not consummate your marriage?
Answer. President, please hold on. Witness, counsel, គង់សំអន you may now proceed.
បាទសូមអរគុណលោកប្រធាន
Counsel, thank you, Mr. President. The question put by the international co-prosecutor, I think the question is similar to that of the national co-prosecutor. This is a hypothetical question for witness to make assumption. So I would like to object to the question put by international co-prosecutor.
Mr. President, there's nothing hypothetical. We need to understand whether what happened that night was voluntary, whether it was their choice, or whether they felt compelled to do it.
President, you are asked to repeat your question from the interpretation in Khmer. I could see that this is a hypothetical question. You please repeat your question. If I find that this is not a hypothetical question for witness to make any assumption, I would allow you to put that question.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is, on the night when you were asked to live with your husband, did you feel you had a choice on whether or not to consummate your marriage, to have sexual relations with him, or did you fear there would be consequences if you did not do that?
Answer, Mr. President. At first, I had no choice, frankly. It was a really difficult decision for me. If I did not submit myself to that situation, I could not live peacefully. It was a difficult decision for me. I had to take in that situation. I could find nowhere to escape. It was difficult for me to make such a decision.
Thank you for clarifying that, Madam Witness. I'm sorry to have to ask you about such difficult things. One more question before I move on to another subject. You've indicated that you and your husband had 3 children together. Were any of them born during the Khmer Rouge regime?
Answer. My first child, my first daughter, was born in 1979. She was born in early 1979. I had a daughter in early 1979.
Let me move to another subject, which is the treatment of Buddhists in Tram Kak district. In answer number 10 of your OCIJ interview, you described attending what you called a big meeting at the district level, at which the Tram Kak district leaders made speeches. And one of the things you testified the district leaders said at this meeting was, and I quote, "Religion and pagodas would no longer exist." End of quote. Do you remember when this meeting took place? What year?
ខ្ញុំ
Answer. I did not recall the content of the meeting. However, I recall that there was a meeting, and as for exact date of the meeting, I did not remember it.
And in discussing this meeting, you referred to two locations. One was the Ang Roka Pagoda, and the other was a place in Kus Commune called Ang Role Village. Do you remember where it was that the meeting was held, where the district leaders announced that religion and pagodas would no longer exist?
ចាស់ការប្រជុំ
Answer. In small meetings and big meetings at Ang Roka and Ang Roli pagodas, there was something said in those meetings. It was said that religions and pagoda would no longer exist. Indeed, in small and big meetings in villages and communes, there was something said about this point.
And were the pagodas closed and people prohibited from practicing religion after these meetings?
Answer. It was said that there would no be religions, and they said that we worship the Buddha, the only concrete Buddha. So the regime did not believe in Buddhism. We are instructed not to believe in such Buddhism because it was superstition.
What happened to the monks in your commune during the Khmer Rouge regime?
From 1970 onward, there were some monks remained, but later on they were all ordered to disrobe. And I saw some monks in their robe, and they rode bicycles to transport the food supply to the front line, the battlefield. So those monks were used to transport food supply to the front battlefield. And later on, those monks had been disrobed, and there was none in the pagoda. And after all of them had been disrobed, namely my younger brother-in-law, they were teased that they were being tricked by those Buddhist concrete stone.
You mentioned earlier this morning that when you were told by your unit chief that you were to be married, that you went to the pagoda to pray. Can you tell us whether pagodas were still open at that time? And when you went to pray, was this something that you could do openly, where people would see you?
At that time, in each pagoda, there was no longer any mount, and they were all disrobed. However, but there were still some Buddha statues, and there was one big statue in that pagoda. And actually, I secretly walked into that temple at night time without anybody seeing it. And I prayed to the Buddha. So let me say that I actually went there secretly without letting anyone know about it.
Let me turn to another subject now. Can you tell us whether there were any Vietnamese or Khmer Krom people in your commune during the Khmer Rouge period? And if so, what happened to them?
In the area where I was, it was likely that there were no Vietnamese people, or because I didn't know everyone, and in fact they searched for Vietnamese because they said that if there were Vietnamese, they would be sent back to Vietnam. And some people who were not actually Vietnamese, but because of the difficulty they faced, they just said that they were related to Vietnamese, so then their names were recorded, and that they would be sent to Vietnam on this day, on that date, but that was not true. They were sent instead to the mountain, and they disappeared since. To my knowledge, there was no real Vietnamese living in my area. Only those who wanted to go to Vietnam in the expectation that the life there was less difficult, and they were in fact Cambodians, and so they were sent away and they disappeared. And in my own unit, the parents left, and they left behind some children.
Madam Witness, you just referred to this, and in answer 14 of your OCIJ interview, you stated as follows, quote, "In late 1976, there was an announcement by the commune chief they would send Vietnamese ethnics back to their country." End of quote. Do you remember where you heard this announcement by the commune chief?
The announcement was made during a meeting. Although it was not actually an announcement, but unit chiefs would go from house to house to take down the biographies of the people. And they said that for those who were connected with their Vietnamese relatives, or who were relatives through Vietnamese, would be returned to Vietnam. Through my knowledge, most people were 17 April people, but then they just said that they were Vietnamese. Then they were put into truckloads, and they were sent away, but not to Vietnam, but toward the mountain area. And later on we learned that it was not true, that they were not Vietnamese and they were not sent to Vietnam.
I want to now ask you a couple of questions about the period after your marriage and the period after you were removed from your teaching position. In answer 11 of your OCIJ interview, you discuss how you lived and worked in a cooperative and carried earth, collected cow dung, and dug canals. And you described the conditions as hard. And you also made the following statement, and I quote, "When I was pregnant, it was very hard for me when I carried hose and earth. When I had morning sickness, I was criticized during the criticism meetings, but I had to work hard." End of quote. Can you tell us when it was that you became pregnant during the Khmer Rouge period? And can you also tell us for how many months after you were pregnant were you still required to carry dirt?
I became pregnant in 1979, says the witness. It was about 3 or 4 months into my pregnancies. I was ordered to collect cow dung to use as fertilizers in the rice fields, and they would weigh the cow dung that I collected, and if there was not enough, then I would be criticized. And due to morning sickness, I could not eat well. I became very emaciated, and I was criticized very often during the meetings that I was actually pretending to be sick. And I was forced to carry dirt again. And I couldn't eat soup. I only ate rice with some pieces of salt. And because of that morning sickness, I could not work that well, and I would be scolded by the unit chief that I was psychologically sick. And every 10th, 20th, and 30th day of a month, the criticism meetings would be held, and everyone would criticize me of pretending to be sick and of being lazy in working. And that put pressure on me. On one hand, I could not work, and on the other hand, the food was not sufficient. The work started at 4 o'clock in the morning, and then we rested at 11 or 12 at noon, and we resumed at 1 o'clock in the afternoon until 5, and then we started again at 6. The work was very hard, and I tried my best, but I could not do it well, and I was then criticized. Then I heard that a croissant, which was one of the fruit tree, and I was told that the fruit tree was poisonous, and then I ate it, but I did not get poisoned. And at that time, my husband was not with me. He was at Leipo commune, while I was at Nhai Nhong commune, and we only made every 10 days. And my feet were swollen, and I had still to work. And they kept saying that because I did not work hard enough, if I worked hard enough, if I walked long enough, then the swollen feet would not be that swollen.
Thank you very much. Let me just clarify something about a date. I'm not sure whether this was a translation issue. Earlier, you told us that you had your first child. Your first child was born in early 1979. Am I correct that your first child was born in early 1979?
My first child was born in early 1979.
And then, do I understand correctly then that you were pregnant for at least part of the year 1978?
Yes. I became pregnant in that year, and I delivered my baby in 79, when my baby was only about 18 days old when I had to flee.
Let me turn to one more subject. In answer 12 of your OCIJ interview, you discussed an evening in 1978 at which time you saw around 10 people who were tied up and being walked away. And then you made the following statement, quote, "Most of the arrested people were policemen, soldiers, and teachers in the previous regime and students." What I wanted to clarify, when you said that most of the arrested people were policemen, soldiers, and teachers, were you talking specifically about the 10 people that you saw that night? Or were you speaking more generally about arrests during the Khmer Rouge period?
It is true that when I saw those people being tied up, it happened at 6 o'clock in early evening. My house was near the main road, and I heard the noise. And from the moonlight, I could see the men were being walked along the road, and I became shocked. And people who saw it also were shocked, but they dared not to come out and watch. And later on, I learned that those people were asked what did they do in the previous regime. And because they hoped that if they were involved in their previous regime's employment or work, that they would be sent to work again. So they said that they were teachers or professors or students. And some of them would say they were senior police officers, etc. But in fact, they were researching those people, and by the end, they were rounded up based on the names they have from the collection of biographies. So messenger would gather those people and walk them in line. The same thing applied to base people if they have any relatives who held a senior position in the previous regime. They would be arrested and killed as well. They used a phrase at that time: if they dig out the grass, they had to dig out the root as well.
Mr. President, I'd like to finish my questioning by having the witness look at two documents with your leave. The first is E3/2450, E3/2450 at Khmer 00270-746, English 00322-161, French ERN 00623-747. This document is a letter regarding from Nang Niang commune regarding the arrest of some former Law Nol officers. The second document is E3/2432, which is a list of 11 former Law Nol officers from the witness's commune, dated the 18th of April, 1977. With your leave, I'd like to present the documents to the witness to see if she can identify any of these individuals.
Yes, you may do so. Court officer, could you get a document from the International Court Prosecutor for the witness examination?
Madam Witness, you've been given two documents. The first one, E32450, contains the name of 3 former Law Nol officers arrested from your commune, 2 first lieutenants and a second lieutenant, pursuant to a decision by the party. And the letter states, and I quote, "Concerning the dispute, nothing has happened so far, but they were arrested because they were high-ranking," end of quote. And the second document has a list of 11 former Law Nol officers from your commune, 2 majors, 5 first lieutenants, and 4 second lieutenants. My question to you is simply if you could look at the names of those individuals from Nang Niang commune and tell us whether you knew any of these people.
These names of people with a ranking in Nyenyong commune. I heard of some names, but I seem not to recognize any of these names.
And my final question, you mentioned that there were efforts to identify people's biographies in your commune. Can you tell us whether you were aware and what the Khmer Rouge did, if anything, to try to determine which people in your commune were former Law Nol soldiers or officers?
Former Law Nol soldiers who were killed by the Khmer Rouge. Is that what you mean?
My question is, were you aware of what the Khmer Rouge did in your commune to try to identify which people were former soldiers or officers in the Law Nol regime?
President witness, please hold on, and Counsel Coupe, you have the floor.
Thank you, President. I have objected earlier with another witness to the phrase the Khmer Rouge. I suppose I seek guidance of the trial chamber whether I should keep raising and make the objection, or once I have made the objection, it is clear that I object to this the use of that phrase. The same goes for the use of the documents. My position was earlier, as indicated, that there are no original documents and that we do not in fact know whether these are in fact documents from Kang Ta-chan. I'd be happy to stand up every time, but that of course would slow down the prosecution's questioning. So my question to you is, can I be considered to raise these particular objections every time this prosecutor phrases it that way, or well,
President, we now reach the time for this morning's adjournment. And in fact, there are 15 minutes remaining for the combined time for the prosecution and the lead co-lawyers for civil parties to question this witness. And the issue of a copy of a document is a contentious issue. And in fact, we have ruled on this issue previously. And in order to make the ruling consistent, the Chamber will decide to adjourn now and resume at 1:30 this afternoon. I noticed the international co-lawyer for civil parties on her feet. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make a very brief request before the Chamber. You cited 15 minutes for the time remaining. However, we would request that we use 30 minutes for our cross-examination, since 15 minutes was taken this morning to discuss the issue of a closed session. And it seems as though we would have lost about 30 minutes in the discussion on the new trial scheduling. So perhaps I may kindly request an additional 20-25 minutes for the cross-examination to begin this afternoon, and I would be most grateful for a favorable response to this request.
President, yes, what you stated is correct, but the Chamber also has to weigh whether this witness shall be returned on Monday next week. It would be pointless for her to return on Monday for only 15 or 20-minute testimony. And I think the minor differences of the time allocation is not that much. Based on the experience we have done so far. Of course, the time cannot be set as punctual as during a boxing match or a soccer game. For example, a 90-minute duration set, or for a marathon running or things like that. The time is rather flexible here based on the actual practicality and the issues before us. And for that reason, we always urge the parties to carefully draft their questions so that we can be more effective in our time arrangement. And the prosecution this morning has taken quite a considerable amount of time in their questions. Court officer, could you assist this witness during the lunch break and have her return to the main courtroom before 1:30 this afternoon? And security personnel, join Sati to take the two accused to the waiting room downstairs and have them return to the main courtroom this afternoon before 1:30 p.m. The court is now in recess.